Hello, and welcome to episode 1, series 1, yes, series 1, of the Profoundly Silly Wisdom podcast. A podcast where women. Blah, blah, blah.
What?
Hello, and welcome to episode 1, series 1 of the Profoundly Silly Wisdom podcast. A podcast for women who are ready to start living as their authentic self rather than following all of the shoulds. Today's video is actually aimed at people who are feeling stuck and maybe even disappointed in life. And I felt in particular that it should be aimed at people who, are in a work situation, although this will apply to life in general. But maybe you're in a situation where, you're feeling stressed or overwhelmed by your workload, or just in a job that you don't enjoy and you feel kind of stuck and don't know where to go. You've racked your brains, you can't think of a way out of this situation, and maybe you've been in a career or a stretch of jobs that just haven't felt fulfilling. And there could be an element of disappointment as well to this. If you've been working for a long time perhaps, or you've had you had big dreams about where your working life might take you, and dreams of having positive impact, but somehow you just got caught in this cycle of just doing a job to pay the bills, and one that doesn't feel very fulfilling at that. And it may be that you're not earning enough to meet your needs, but it might equally be that you're almost like trapped by your success. If you've got a job that actually does pay well, but you think, well, I can't leave this job and do something else. I can't afford to. I've got too many other responsibilities. So any of those scenarios, and this video is for you. So today I'm going to reveal a big secret as to why we get stuck in the first place, and also two big mistakes that we make that keep us stuck once we are stuck. So bear with me. The good news is you don't have to make massive life changes. This isn't one of those kind of just take the leap of faith and it will all fall into place kind of videos. If you want one of them, you'll have to go somewhere else. Basically, the way I see it, and from my experience, because I was stuck for 25 years. So just to, give you a little bit of an inkling if you haven't seen my intro video. When you're stuck, when you're in that kind of stuck mindset, that's not the time actually to be making massive life changes. And especially if you feel quite stressed, if you've got intense negative emotions going on, that's not the time to take those leaps, if you like. Perhaps on a bad day, you imagine calling your boss an asshole in front of the whole office and storming out, But yeah, that generally, coming from a disempowered place, it doesn't really best set us up to gain the clarity that we actually desire, that got us to this point of frustration in the first place. So let me share the first step. So the first one is you need to become aware of what's actually happening. So whatever your scenario is, your particular scenario that's causing you stress, it's about separating your feelings from the story that's actually running in your head. Like if we take the example of the boss, right? The demanding boss. Perhaps, in this scenario, perhaps it's because they keep giving you tight deadlines. Like, can you turn this report round in a day? And you're like, I've got, a few other things to do. And, so you get stressed and you think that you then run this story of how inconsiderate this person is, or, tone deaf. I remember that, saying that a few times in my life. Or whatever it is, but you go into a story and you just feel these feelings of stress or frustration, anger, whatever the negative feelings are. But the thing is, if all you do is just continue to get triggered and run that story, you're powerless, because you're giving your power away to that. I was going to say to the boss, but it's really the character in your story, because the boss in this particular case is the villain and you're the victim. We all know these story templates. They're familiar with us because it's how our mind works. It's why we go to the movies and read books, because it rings true to us, because this is how we construct our reality. But that doesn't help you get unstuck. So what you need to do is separate the emotion from the story and get focused on yourself. So the first, the big secret that I was going to share with you is it's actually your thinking about the situation that is keeping you stuck. It's not the situation itself, because basically what's happened is you've created a story of being stuck. And you, because you've created a story, and we all have these story templates already, you know, set up in our minds, and so you can't see the options that are available to you because you're in that stuck story, basically. And it's also, if you think about it in terms of a good example is the lost key. You can't find that key. You're maybe on your way to the stressy job, and you're short of time. You look in your bag, you can't find it, it's not there. You run to the fridge, did I leave it there? You've looked down the side of the sofa, it's not there either. And then you realize you're getting yourself really worked up, and then you just take a moment, or maybe you get distracted by something else. Sometimes that happens. And then you just come back and you look in your bag, and it's right there in front of you, and you're like, how did that happen? Where? This is weird. Magic. But it's basically because you're running that story in your head. This is how our mind works. So this kind of brings us on to the mistake, the first mistake I'll share with you that keeps us stuck is that we immediately try to rush to fix the situation, but we're doing it not from a place of empowerment. We're doing it from the place of that story. And therefore, we don't see the options. We don't see reality clearly. We're constructing a reality of stuckness or lostness or whatever the story is. And so that's the first mistake that we make, is we try to fix things when we're stressed, when we're least able and competent. And why does this happen? Well, the stress response, if you think about it, is it's a programmed in response. It's an evolutionary response. And it's designed for physically dangerous situations. So, when we were in situations where, for example, we were part of the food chain, either from other humans or from from animals, or dinosaurs, we, in order to survive as a species, we needed to have that fear programmed in response that causes us to do something to save ourselves. And so what are your three options if you're stressed? It's fight, flight, or freeze. So, in that scenario, when you're stressed, your options are to stand up to the stressor, or the trigger in this case, to run away from it, or to just freeze and just let whatever's going to happen. It might be game over if it's a saber-toothed tiger that has just jumped out at you before you even knew it was there. So that's what the stress response is designed for. But the problem is that we use it in all of these scenarios that aren't life-threatening. And because it's a narrow response for a very specific, physically dangerous situation, it's only designed to deal with that. But when we use that, when we try to fix things in that energy that are not physically threatening, we end up creating chaos. Like if you did shout at your boss in front of everybody, that might have some consequences to it, So what we need to do is separate ourselves out from that sort of stress response and from the story that is running in our heads, so that we can actually, be more empowered, and that allows clarity to come in. So that takes us on to step 2, which is accept how you feel without judging yourself. This is a really, really important one, So, for example, in the case of the demanding boss, you might, if you've just got stressed, rather than shouting at the boss, maybe you manage to, carve out a bit of time, maybe just go to the bathroom to gather yourself if you've got that worked up, or even just go to your desk and give yourself a little bit of mental space to calm down. But what you do with that time, apart from breathe, which is always a good option, by the way, just deep breaths, if you can use that time to be able to observe your feelings without judging yourself, then that's creating a little bit more separation between you and that automatic stuck story that you find yourself in. And so what you want to do is list out how you're feeling. So instead of running the story of my boss is a you know what, you remove your focus from the boss, from the trigger, and you look inside, you look at yourself, and you say, okay, my boss has done that again. I find that really irritating. So I feel irritated. I feel stressed. Why do I feel stressed? Because I don't know if I can do this in time. And then, if this is an important report, for example, perhaps you worry about your reputation. So I feel worried. So start labeling. You might need to take a few deep breaths to be able to think straight, but start labeling the emotions. That's been shown by studies to be really effective in helping to create a little bit of distance between you and the stressful situation. It helps you to feel a bit more in control because you're becoming aware of what's happening. But what you might find are bonus points, actually, before I say the next thing, is that if you can also identify how you feel in your body, like if you feel worried, well, how does that feel? I feel a knot in my stomach, or I feel tension in my head. If you can do that, that's also helping to bring you into the present moment, and again, creating more space. It will make you feel better because you're focusing on yourself, and that's the only person you really have any true power over. But yeah, it will also help you to get clarity. But what you might find happening in that scenario is that your inner critic jumps in, and in the demanding boss example, for example, it could say something like, "Yeah, you know, yeah, but you should be grateful you've got a job. Look at all the people who don't have a job." So, and your inner critic can say any number of things. But what it's actually doing is invalidating your feelings. And it does this through guilting or shaming you. Um, and it's the reason it does this is because it's trying to get you to either take action or not take action. It's trying to keep you on track. Because if you think about it, your inner critic is basically the voice of the rule book. It's all the rules you've been taught to follow, all the things that you need to do, you should do to be a good person. You should live here, you should do this kind of work, you should, be kind, you should be this, that, and the other. And it's not that, necessarily all of the rules are wrong, but it's that should energy, it's that guilting and shaming kind of energy. And it's really not helpful. In fact, it's quite toxic. And if you end up listening to your inner critic, what you do is then you shut yourself down. You don't give yourself time and the respect that you deserve to actually be aware of what's going on in you and just to acknowledge, yeah, I'm feeling worried right now. I don't know. I'm feeling confused. I'm feeling sad, whatever it is. So you end up ignoring your own authentic desires. And what are you ignoring then? You're ignoring your authentic self. And so, the inner critic is what we pick up from our upbringing, where we're taught all of the rules of how life works. And unfortunately, a lot of the time we're taught through guilting and shaming rather than in a sort of a more healthy kind of way. It would be healthier if we were taught to kind of tune into our authentic selves first and then see how we can, contribute to society. But often we just get told, no, do this, do that, don't do that. And we get shouted at when we do it wrong. And so, if you may notice, you will most likely notice that voice of the inner critic coming up when you try to make space for yourself. So it's really important to just give yourself the space. And, I just use the sentence, I feel, like in this case, I feel anxious, and that's okay. Even if the critic is saying, you should feel grateful you have a job at all, you say, well, that's fine, but I'm just taking time to acknowledge how I feel, and this is how I feel. And even just that, and don't even bother arguing. I wouldn't actually argue with my inner critic, because you're just arguing with all of the voices that you've heard throughout your life telling you what you should do and who you should be. It's, again, it's giving your energy away. What you're wanting to do is bring your energy back into you, because that's your place of power. So, to summarize that point, or the last 2 points, basically the story that runs in your head when you feel stuck in life it's your construction of reality, and it's based on the programmed beliefs that you picked up from childhood, basically. And it's often influenced by the wounds that we receive as well. So we don't have time to go into that today, but that's where that story comes from. I remember I had a very stressful experience where I was put up for redundancy, and it was done in a way that was not very gracious, let's say, or even competent, if I'm going to be honest. So at the time, I was really upset. I felt betrayed. Is the feeling that I felt? I felt afraid and betrayed. And being a Cancerian, I knew I needed to make a nice big space for myself to process my emotions. So I actually took a week off, a week of leave, just to get my head right. And as I was working through these stressful emotions, I just realised through that experience that I was just, all of these stories that I was running in this particular work scenario were just projections from my childhood, from what I experienced as a child in growing up in my family. And we all have wounds. Our parents have wounds. They pass them on to us. We project them out onto other people. So this is not about judging people, but it's just about recognizing this is where it comes from. So yeah, this is where the stories, the automatic stories, come from. They come from these wounds and these beliefs about life and what life is like, that we get from a very young age before we have any chance to work out whether they actually make sense for us or not. And the inner critic, the voice of the inner critic, is basically, as I said before, the programmed rule book. So all the shoulds that we were taught to live by as a child, and that get reinforced by society, whatever culture we're brought up in as well. So by taking these 2 steps of just being aware of what's going on, seeing that story that's running, not trying to change it, just noticing it, and also accepting how you feel. After you've labelled it, if you felt it in your body, bonus points, and accepting that's how I feel. And not needing to justify it, just it's okay to feel what you feel. You don't have to act on it, you don't have to do anything at this point. You're just acknowledging that's how you feel. There's a part of you that is hurt or disappointed, and that's okay. So just that will actually create a space for clarity to start coming in. And the final step is set an intention to open yourself up to receive guidance, however it wants to come. If you don't like the term set an intention, then say make a decision. If you like something more definitive, fire signs might want something a bit more dynamic. But do this, decide that you're going to open yourself up to receive guidance, the clarity that you seek. If you're stuck in a position and you don't know how to get out, you just make a decision to be open. And if you can't believe, I'm not asking you to take anything on faith. I'm not asking you to take anything just because I said it. You're just giving yourself space for whatever wants to come in. And if the best you can do is I set an intention to open to the possibility of receiving guidance. If you're so down in your situation that you can't even imagine guidance coming in, just do the best you can. Just accept the possibility. Even just doing that can make a big difference. And how does this work? Well, it's about focus. It's about focusing your mind. If you've noticed, the first 2 steps are about moving your focus onto you, rather than getting caught up in the stories, and rather than getting caught up in the opinions of what you should and shouldn't be doing. So this third step is just about, opening yourself up to receive, being willing to receive. And by setting an intention, and you can do it in the form of a prayer or a statement, and you can write it in your journal and read it every day, or put it somewhere where you'll see it. But what you're doing is you're creating a focus for your subconscious mind, so it can bring you insights. And the way this works, it's called the reticular activating system, and it's basically the way your subconscious works. Your subconscious is designed to reinforce your beliefs. Why? Because there is so much happening in reality. We get hit by billions and billions and billions of bits of data all at the same time. It's much more than our bodies and our conscious minds can possibly process. So your subconscious mind's job is basically to create a reality for you that enables you to not be completely mentally overloaded. And so the way it does this is it scours the environment for things that reinforce the belief. We've all experienced this, like when you're looking for something, to buy something, say a car, say a yellow Mercedes. Don't ask me why I picked that. But once you start making an intention to look for something, then suddenly you see the yellow Mercedes everywhere. You start seeing them. They start coming to your attention. And that's because you set that intention to find something. And now your subconscious mind is showing you the options. And this is what we want to happen, basically. We want to get you out of that stressy state and into a place where you're actually able to see options in your situation. So that's why setting an intention is so powerful. And this points to the second mistake that we make that keeps us stuck. We often, one of the reasons, I certainly know for myself, one of the reasons I was stuck for so long, and I literally had to be shoved out of the nest to quit my job. I had to be forced to quit, basically. Was because I wanted to work it all out. Because, like I said in my last video, I knew when I quit my job that I wasn't going back to what I was doing before, but I had no clue what I was going to do. And that was so scary to me, really, really scary, because I was defined. A lot of us in the Western world particularly, we're defined by our job. And also, that's all I knew. That's the only way I knew to make money. And so, I didn't want to quit because I thought I've no idea how I'm going to sustain myself. I'll end up spending all my savings. This was the big fear. And, running out of money. And then I'll be even worse off than I am now. So I know what it feels like to feel stuck. Believe me, I'm not speaking, from a lack of experience. But the thing is, like I said before, if you're in a stuck story, your conscious mind is not able to work it out because the options are blocked. And so it's a mistake to think that you can't take any action unless you know all, from A to Z, how it's all going to pan out, because that's just not how life works. So if you want clarity, you basically need a clear mind. So that's your job, is to follow through these steps to enable yourself to get that clear mind. And it's not to get the answer, because the answer isn't in your conscious mind, certainly not in this stressy state. It will arise when you're able to make enough space, but don't underestimate just, opening just a chink, the light can come through. So don't underestimate these small steps done consistently. So that's the other point I wrote down. This is the key point for accessing your intuition, because your intuition works more like a trail of breadcrumbs. In this scenario, so I've not worked now for 19 months. I'm so glad no one told me that's what was going to happen, because I would have freaked out. But basically, what I've had to do over the period of time that I've been, not having a job, my job has been my focusing my mind, and learning to tune into my intuition, which comes in the form of guided steps. So it's one step at a time. And it's sometimes the guidance you get, it's not even specifically related to the problem as you have in your problem story, whether it's the lost story, the stuck story, the poor and penniless story, whichever story you're running, it doesn't even always relate to that. But there's a deeper wisdom within you that knows basically what is right for you, your authentic self. And that's what you're tuning into. And it will, but you have to learn to trust it. Now, with any relationship, of course, trust comes over time as you communicate with each other, and you learn that you are trustworthy. And this is what has happened over this period of time. I've learned that actually I can trust the guidance that comes through. But I certainly was not like that earlier on. I kept panicking that, oh, this is all going to go wrong and I'm just going to be poor and destitute. So this is it. So obviously I don't have time to talk about the intuition piece in this video in any detail. So we'll follow on with that in later videos. So just to summarize, when we finally start to understand how our minds work, we're able to use this powerful gift of thought, of focused thought, focused attention, and we're able to use it to work for us, to create a reality that is desirable rather than to work against us, which is keeping us stuck in a reality that is not appealing in any way, shape or form. So that's my video for today. I hope you found it helpful. If you do start implementing these steps, you will notice a greater level of clarity. It will start to come in like the light through the cracks. And it will take you from this place of, disempowerment to actually taking your power back from, a life of feeling a victim, feeling like life is happening to you, to actually understanding that you are the one creating your life experience and that you have the power to change the experience that you are having from a day to day, from day to day. So if you found this helpful, please subscribe, as I will be sharing more videos along this topic. There's only so much I can cover in one video, and there's so much to this topic. It's really fascinating, to me anyway. And if you found it helpful, again, like the video so that the nice people at YouTube will share it with others. So that's the only way it gets out. So yeah. And next week, basically, I'm going to be doing some myth busting, which I'm very excited about. I'm going to be sharing with you why we're so much more than we realised, and then we've been led to believe. And in fact, we are magnificent, just in case you didn't know. So if you found that helpful, I'm very happy about that. And I will see you on the other side.